Well, hello, parents and families. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Today, we are talking about off campus housing, and I am joined here by Maura Roberts, who is our director of off campus student life. And so she's going to be talking to you about all things off campus housing. And so, as always, we super appreciate you being here and engaging with us. Family U Chats is our series of family webinars, and it's where we talk with really important campus partners to make sure that you have the information you need. And so we want to make sure that you are able to best support your student. And so we're super excited here today. I want to make sure that you all know that once we're done, this recording will be posted on our website, on our Facebook page, and on our YouTube. And so you can go back and watch this recording or share it with your student if you feel like you need to. But we're super excited that you're here. And without much more talking, I'm going to turn it over to Maura. Maura, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. So my name's Maura Roberts. I'm the director for off-campus student life, as Jonathan mentioned. So I'm here to talk to you about off-campus housing and the support that our office can give to you and your student during the search process. So this is what I'm going to go over, a little bit of an overview of our office and some of the things that we do. And then I'll jump into showing you our official off-campus housing website and how to navigate that. And then I'll go over some basic information about what to know before signing a lease, some of which I do go over with students throughout the year, and then finishing up with how to contact us for more information. So one of the main things that our office has to offer our students is we have our off-campus student center. So this is what we kind of consider the on-campus home for our off-campus students. It's essentially a lounge space on campus. It's located in Bartlett Hall, which is pretty central. We're right near the chapel and Goodell, if you're familiar with that part of campus. In the space, we have free coffee, tea, and hot chocolate. We do locker rentals, so students who, aren't able to go back to their residence halls in between classes have somewhere they can store their belongings. We've got a fridge and a microwave if folks want to bring their food in and have a space to eat. We do have a charging station for most devices. We offer comfortable seating and work tables. The photo you can see here at the bottom includes what that space looks like. And we'll also host programming and events in this space. So we'll do things like roommate mixers for students to meet potential roommates. We'll do educational presentations in this space. And then we'll do some fun ones like cookie decorating or things like that. We also, our staff is located right in this area. And so we're able to connect students who are looking for basic needs resources with those right on site. Some of the programs and services we offer that don't necessarily go directly with off-campus housing, but I think are important to mention, include our Good Neighbor Registration Program, which is a collaboration between our office and both the Hadley Police Department and the Amherst Police Department. And this is a noise mitigation program. Its goal is really to help our students be good neighbors in the residential neighborhoods that they end up living in. We also have Good Neighbor Grants. These are an opportunity for students to apply for up to $500 to do some kind of community building event in their neighborhood. So we've had a lot of success with those. At the bottom, you can see a photo of a pretty large block party that was hosted by some students in collaboration with their permanent resident neighbors. We also have our Team Positive Presence undergraduate student team. So these are student employees employed through off-campus student life. They will often work our different housing events, as well as share important information with our students all on the campus about off-campus living, as well as how to stay connected to the UMass community. We do a fall and a spring housing fair. So we might have seen some of you this fall. We always do it during family weekend. And then we'll do it again, I think this year it's the end of February. So that's an opportunity where all of the major property management companies will all be in one place. Students can come see what's available, kind of compare and contrast and get their questions answered all in one space. And students love it because we also have a lot of great giveaways available at those events. And then we do neighborhood resource fairs. So these occur in the fall. So if your student ends up living in one of the neighborhoods around town or one of the apartment complexes, we might be hosting a resource fair where they are. So that's where we bring resources from the UMass campus or town resources all together in one place. So students can have access to them and learn about what there is that can help support them while they're living off campus. Sort of similarly, we do neighborhood outreach. So that's where one of our permanent staff members, as well as our student team, our Team Positive Presence, will go out into neighborhoods where students are living to bring information to them. So we aren't relying on students finding us necessarily, we go out and look for them. We also send out off-campus emails once or twice a month. These might be sort of alerting students to upcoming events, or they may include information like the one we sent out Friday, which included information about leaving for Thanksgiving break and things you might want to do to your apartment before leaving in order to leave it safe for when you come back. We also offer SNAP drop-in sign-up hours in the off-campus student center. So that is where we have somebody come in from the Western Mass Food Bank and they help students sign up for SNAP, which is money towards food. So one of the main supports that we do is the off-campus housing support, and that's really what I'm here to talk to you about today. So we have staff that's available to meet in person, over the phone, or online. Students can schedule one-on-one appointments with us through Teams on our website. We are available, our typical hours are Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5. We can be reached by phone or email or in person. If you do call and leave a message, make sure you give us your contact information so we can get back to you. And we're always happy to connect with parents and caregivers. So if you would like to set up a meeting with or without your students, we're happy to have a chat. So the off-campus housing site is offcampushousing.umass.edu. And this is the only official UMass off-campus housing site. So on this website, students can search for housing, they can look for roommates, and there are resources around living off campus included on that website. And I'm going to go into greater detail about that now. We do always recommend that folks use this website as it's a lot less likely to have scams on it. I know that there are listings on Craigslist and other websites like that, but we do often hear about issues that students have. So this is our off-campus housing website. As I mentioned, it's offcampushousing.umass.edu. Up at the top, you can see there's a section for housing, a section for roommates, and then a resources tab as well. And then on this main page, there are, in addition, are little updates that we can do that might just point to specific information. If there is some kind of common rental scam that's going on, we might post that there. We have our living off campus certification, which we'll talk about in a minute, advertised there. So it's a space where we can really update our students on what is coming. Up in the upper right-hand corner, you can see the sign in, sign up button. So for students and folks in the UMass community, they're able to sign in with their UMass Net ID in order to save and contact properties. For parents, if you are interested in checking out the site, you can sign up for a guest login, and that's good for 30 days. So we definitely recommend checking that out. If you were to click into the housing tab, it'll bring you here, and you can see on the left-hand side, there's a map view. So for our visual folks, that can be helpful for sort of seeing what's available. Each of the blue dots is a current listing that's available. You can see the grayed out section, that is the UMass campus. So if you're looking for something close to campus, this is a nice way to sort of see that and visualize where it is in relation to where you're at on campus. Up in the top, there's the filter section. If you click more, a bunch of different options pop down. I always like to mention the on a bus route filter. So for our students who don't have a car, clicking that will allow them to see all of the apartments that are on a bus route and so easily accessible to campus. If you were to click into one of those blue dots, it would bring you to the actual apartment listing. And so this is what that's going to look like. There's an opportunity for videos and photos to be included there. As well as over on the right-hand side, you can see, there's a section where you can send a message directly to the person who posted the listing. So that is a great way to start the process. We always say, and it looks like on this one, there is a phone number included. If you're really interested in a property, we recommend calling. A lot less people are comfortable making phone calls, so you might get to the top of the list that way. And then as you can see up in the corner, there's a heart. So that is the way that students can save listings that they like, so that next time they log in, they have a list ready to go. So if you were to scroll down on that listing, you'd see more information about the lease terms, the expenses, and maybe an apartment description. And this is just more information. Folks can fill in as much or as little as they want to. If you were to click over to the roommate tab, we took out any personal information, but this is the general look of it. Similar to the listings, they can look through the roommates and see who might be a good fit. If you're logged in and created a profile, you can also create your own roommate listing. So if you're someone who, say your students looking for roommates, this is a great opportunity to both make a profile and look through other student profiles. If you were to click into one of those profiles, this is what it's going to look like. The format's very similar to the housing listings, so students can put in as much or as little information as they feel comfortable. They can do pictures, they can do descriptions, and then there's some prompting for them to fill out what their housing needs are or what they're looking for in a roommate. So that might include the rent range, their lease preference, anything that they think might be helpful for finding a good match. And then similar to the housing listings, they can send messages directly through the website. So this is good opportunity if they don't feel comfortable yet sharing phone numbers. You can do it directly through the website. And similar to the heart on a housing page, there's a little star in the corner, where if they click on that, it'll save their roommate profile so that next time they log in, they can see the list of folks that might work well for them. One thing I want to mention is we do have a great bus system in the area. As I mentioned, there is an option to filter for apartments that are on the bus route. And so we do at Amherst, it's a free, they're always free in Amherst, and then this year, and we're hoping it'll be extended, but all routes are free. You can look at an interactive map to see if there's a bus route close to the apartment that students are looking at. We always get asked about timeline, so I wanted to add this in here. The housing market has changed over the last few years, and so we're actually in a good place right now where we really recommend that students sort of take the fall semester to think about what their budget is, who they want to live with, what they need or want for an apartment. They can take the fall to really research what's out there. And then when they come back in the spring, they can really start searching in earnest of what might work for them. That's not to say we don't have students signing leases already for next year. We certainly do. And if your student is confident about their budget and who they want to live with, and they find something that's a good fit, there's no reason not to sign down. But I do want to emphasize that it's not necessary. In the past, it was a little bit more competitive. At this point, a lot of apartment complexes were built in the last few years. So we're at a place where there's a lot of availability out there. And even this year in the fall, there were still apartments available for the fall. So they don't need to have sort of any stress or panic about the timeline. So the Living Off Campus certification is an online tool that students can take. You can take it as well. It just kind of goes through the basics about rental applications, off-campus housing costs. If you've never lived off campus before, we recommend to students that they do take this class. It's just on our website. And they can take it as many times as they want. It's available to everyone. So finding the right rental, kind of what I mentioned, and this is what I talk about with the students when we meet with them, is really thinking about what they can afford. And keeping in mind that in Amherst, most leases in the area are going to be 12-month long leases. So living on campus, you're really paying for that 8-9 month period. If you're looking at off-campus housing, it's gonna be for the full year. So taking that into consideration, thinking about what the priorities are, what they want versus what they need. So if they need to be on a bus route, if they need the budget to be at a certain point. We also recommend looking into what the history of the property is or the neighborhood. There are certain spaces that tend to be a little bit louder or just in different communities. And so one way to kind of find out more about that is to looking into the property to see if there's previous noise complaints, if there's any nuisance house citations. Specifically for Amherst, this information can be found on the Amherst website. And we can definitely talk about that individually with the students or you as you go through the search process. We always recommend inspecting the rental, bringing a friend or family member. It's great if a family member or caregiver or supporter is available to come to see the apartment before a student signs on to it. Sometimes that's not a possibility. So you could always have your student do a phone tour with you where they kind of show you the space that they're looking at, just to get another set of eyes on it. We always recommend getting details in writing and making sure you understand the lease before signing. So something that's available to students specifically is the Student Legal Services Office. So these are the free lawyers on campus available to students, and they are happy to schedule a time to look over a lease either before your student signs it or after. Upfront costs. So this is important to keep in mind as well when it comes to looking for off-campus housing. There are certain things that can and cannot be charged. So at the signing application point, there is potential for a brokerage fee. This can only be charged by a real estate broker and not by a landlord. So if you see this charge coming up, just make sure it's a licensed real estate broker who is charging it. Application fees, landlords cannot charge this. So per state law, the only things that a landlord can charge include first month, last month, and security deposit. And these can be less or equal to the first month's rent. So if the rent is $1,000 a month, you're looking at least $3,000 in that first payment. You can also be charged the cost to buy and install a new lock and key. We don't see this every time. The cost isn't high, but it is the other thing that can be charged. The landlord cannot charge a security deposit for pets, but they can potentially charge pet rent. If anything comes up where your student is being charged around pets, it is very complicated. So we always recommend talking to Student Legal Services about their specific situation. Financial aid is a big question that we get. We always recommend, of course, talking to financial aid office about the student's individual financial aid package. But I will say many students do use their financial aid to pay for rent. It works very similarly to how it does for on campus, where the financial aid or loans come in and then it comes into the Bursar account. Anything that is owed to the university is taken out, and then it'll be directly deposited in the account that has been set up. So many students use this for cost of books, their cost of rent, cost of food. So that is available to students. The aid is initially calculated by the estimated costs of living on campus. So again, a reminder that moving off campus, you're going to be paying for that 12-month period versus just the academic year. When it comes to signing a lease, we recommend students and you, if you're available for it, to review all the documents before signing the lease, read it and be certain that you understand the terms. Definitely ask questions and don't rush through it. A good landlord will be happy to answer these questions for you and your student. The lease is a legal contract between you and the landlord. It's going to state what you promise to do, which is to pay rent, and what the landlord promises to do, which is to make repairs and let you live. So we always tell students, definitely talk to your parents or guardians or other experienced people in your life for advice, as they likely have practical experience on the matter. And again, making an appointment for a free lease review with Student Legal Services Office is always a great idea. Now in the area, it is very common that students will be asked to have a co-signer on a lease. And for most of our students, that is a parent or guardian. We let students know if they're unable to get a co-signer to talk to the landlord or property manager to explain the situation. And sometimes there are other things that they can look at to sort of get by on this. But it is very typical that students will be required to have a co-signer for a guarantor. And something else to look for on the lease are the words jointly and severally liable. So what that's saying is that each person is fully responsible for the full amount of rent, for fulfilling all conditions of the lease, and for any damages to the rental. So if there are 4 students that are going to be renting an apartment, they're each going to have a co-signer. So there's going to be 8 people on that lease that are fully responsible for that full amount of rent to come in. And this is just so the landlords can make sure that they get their rent. A housemate agreement is something that we always recommend to students sort of before moving in with folks, but often it'll happen if they're already living together and an issue comes up. We do have templates available online on our website. We recommend it. Students are going to be doing this in the residence hall, so it's something they're used to. But it's really just a good conversation starter around topics that need to be talked about before moving in, regardless of whether it's friends or just folks they met on our website. Just around habits, compatibility, things like that. So subletting. So as I mentioned, because most leases are 12 months, we have a lot of conversations with students about subletting. So subletting is a temporary arrangement where the student, as the original tenant, will remain responsible to the landlord for the apartment, while someone else lives there temporarily. So if a student is leaving for the summer and wants to find someone to live in their apartment to pay the rent for the summer, this comes out. Or if students are going abroad for a semester, we'll have students who are hoping to sublet their apartments. Although it's common, don't assume that you can sublet. We always recommend checking the lease first, because you're going to need that landlord approval. Students can post and find sublets on our off-campus housing website. So the most common thing we see is really the summer period, as well as for folks going abroad. So if your student is planning to go abroad for part of the year, they kind of have 2 different options. They could sign that 12-month lease and try to find somebody to live in an apartment for the semester that they'll be away. Or they could choose to be that person who is subletting someone else's apartment. So it's really kind of up to what you or they are comfortable with. A sublet is not a guarantee. Many students do find people to fill in their apartment, their bedrooms, but it's not a guarantee. So when you're signing a lease for 12 months, you're responsible for that 12 months. Rental insurance is really important to have. So all landlords are going to have insurance, but it's only going to cover the building itself and not the personal items within it. Looking around, it seems like it's around 15 to 30 a month. We always tell students to, if they're dependent on their parents' insurance policies, to have them check to see if it would cover the property in the rental. So that's something you could look into now if that is your, if your student is thinking about living off campus. So we always want to point out some red flags for scams, some things that we sort of hear students talk about and things we want you all to be aware of as well. So if the landlord or property management company is pressuring your student to sign quickly, using language like it's the last unit left, often we find folks are trying to fill their apartments up early, and it's not likely to be the last unit. If it's something that, you know, your student is really in love with and it's a good fit, okay, but somebody shouldn't be trying to push you quickly into signing this arrangement, really. If a landlord or property manager won't meet in person, that could be a red flag. If they're only communicating through email or messaging, they refuse to talk on the phone. If they won't let you see the property before signing. Now, this one is a little tricky because we have found that post-COVID, less people are less likely to want to show an apartment before, if there's a student living there currently. So that isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it is something to keep in mind. If they won't let you see the lease until it's time to sign, that's a red flag. A good landlord's gonna wanna make sure that you understand it, you're happy with what you're reading, and you feel comfortable signing. If they try to charge a fee that wasn't discussed earlier, another red flag. It's something to really bring to the attention of our office and the student services office. A really good resource to know about is inspection services here in Amherst. So if your student is renting in Amherst, inspection services is an office that really cares about our students and the Amherst community. And will help support if something doesn't seem like it's going right. So in Amherst, all units must have a rental permit. At this point, landlords can self-inspect the units to certify compliance with codes. And students have a right to request an inspection from inspection services at any point, and the landlord cannot deny the inspection. This system is changing over the next few years. Instead of landlords self-inspecting, it will require inspections, which I think will be a good thing. We do have a housing code checklist on our website, so you can look at example violations and landlords required timeline to fix them. And included here is the phone number, which you can also find on the Amherst Town website. So that's it for the presentation. I'm happy to take any questions. Again, here is our contact information. If you were to scan the QR code there, it'll bring it to our off-campus student center email address. As I said, we're always happy to meet with you, happy to meet with your student. We really want to make sure that folks are aware that we're here and available. And so please keep that in mind as you talk to your student about their off-campus housing, the search process.
Well, thanks, Maura. So I'm going to read some of the questions to you that are coming in. Families, if you would, please use the Q&A feature. That helps us to kind of keep all the questions organized. So the first question, and this is not a Maura question. Maura is not overall campus housing. But the first question is, when does the application for on-campus housing open for 2025-2026? Maura, do you know? Because if not, I also know.
You do know? Oh, okay. Maybe you know. I know tentatively. So
Okay, yeah. So on the housing calendar, which you can find on the on-campus housing website, it says that it will open February 18th. And that is the date that housing has set. Now, that is maybe sometimes subject to change, but if that's what they've set out, that's usually the date it'll start. Maura can talk a little bit about this, but are students guaranteed housing their sophomore and junior year?
So students are only really guaranteed housing their first year on campus. The way it's kind of gone is if your student is interested in living on campus, we always recommend, regardless of what year they are, to really follow through with that on-campus housing process. As mentioned, opens up mid-February. Students will have a good idea of whether they're going to get the housing on campus that they're interested in after spring break. At which if they don't get what they want, there is still time to look off campus. So we want to make sure folks are never signing a lease off campus if their desire is really to live on campus. So no guaranteed for anyone past that first year. But in the last year or so, it's been pretty likely that if folks follow through the process, and that means making sure they're keeping up on the deadlines, going to their appointment, they are likely to be able to find something on campus. It might not be their first choice though, but if they are interested in living on campus, following that process is the way to go. And then there will be housing available off campus if they don't get what they need. So I would recommend either way, if you're not a first year student, that students really look at the off-campus housing process, and then just so they're prepared if they don't get what they want on campus.
Yeah. And the next question says, how much notice does the university give students on no housing being available? What I will say is it typically, if you can find on the housing website, and I'm going to type the answer to this question, you can find the process here. And that is really what we typically follow. So right now, what's on the website is from last year, but typically our processes run about the same time every year. So more anything you would add to that?
No, it should be pretty typical to last year, and there are different kind of times throughout the spring and summer where something might become available. But that information should be there.
All right, so our next question says, how feasible is it to lease the off-campus housing for international students? So how feasible is it for international students to find a lease?
So many of our off-campus students, are international. All of our graduate students, unless they have family or family housing, are living off campus, and we have a large population of international students. And we are willing to meet one-on-one. I know it can be a little bit more complicated if you're especially looking for housing while you're in the area. But this is very common, and we're comfortable working with folks. So it is very feasible to lease off-campus housing as an international student.
The next question says, if my student wants to be on campus, when do they know? Again, this is typically in March. And based on Moore's timeline, I think that means that they still have time to find a lease off campus. Next question is, can you give an estimate of the current average rent for 4-bedroom apartments? If you have a range, that would be helpful.
Sure. So there is quite a range in quality and price when it comes to off-campus housing. What we kind of tell folks is be prepared for around 1,000 a month if you're in a shared apartment. If you're looking at a 4-bedroom, it is likely to be under that. But it totally depends on what apartment complex or if you're looking at a house. So thinking about 1,000 a month is really a good starting point.
Is there a site or an app that rates landlords?
There is not at this time. I know if apartment complexes also list on other sites like apartments.com, sometimes you can put in kind of ratings. Our site does not currently have that. But you may be able to find some kind of reviews out there. I would keep in mind though that often what we're seeing is if someone's really upset or angry about a situation, they're gonna write the review versus the good experiences students have had. If you do have questions about specific property complexes, or just you want more information about different areas, we're happy to give sort of our thoughts on it and what we've seen over the years.
So is there only one responsible signer and co-signer, or are all students and guardians required signers?
So typically, for each apartment, there's going to be, they do it a few different ways. Like one apartment might have one lease where if it's a 4-bedroom apartment, all 4 students are going to be signing that. And then all 4 will also have a co-signer. Some apartments, like I know Olympia will do where each room has its individual lease. So in that case, it's the student signing their bedroom lease and their co-signing is signing that bedroom lease. But everyone who is sort of legally living in that apartment is going to be signing some kind of lease.
Similar question, but is there a site that reviews that posts reviews or ratings for different apartment complexes or rentals in the area?
There isn't one site that does this. If you do sort of Google the apartment complex, you can sometimes find information, but nothing kind of official through the university.
Their student mentioned on-campus apartments north. Is that considered part of on-campus housing or off-campus housing?
That is considered residential life on-campus housing. Similar to, there's a family housing unit that is on-campus housing.
One of the questions that we received says, will there be a recording available? Absolutely. We will get it posted on our website, umass.edu/parents. You can also find it on our YouTube. You can also find it on our Facebook. And so you can find all of that information there. Is there a selection process for on-campus housing? Does it consider GPA or major or anything like that?
No, it will not take in consideration, GPA or major, but it does take into consideration, the year, the admit term that the student started.
The next question was, can you tell us the website you mentioned again
Yeah.
that students should be using?
And that's offcampushousing.umass.edu.
Okay. And I will also post a link to that. Um,
And then we also have our department website, which includes sort of some other information about some of those programs that I talked about. And so our department is off-campus student life. So you can find our department website at umass.edu /off-campus life.
and I put both of those in the chat so that you all can have that. Do co-signers need to be there in person to sign?
It really depends on the landlord or the property management company. A lot of people can do the e-sign process. So it's not necessarily necessary. We definitely recommend if you're able to come and see the apartment and sign the lease, that if it's available to you, it could be a good thing to do. But it's certainly not required.
Are co-signers required to live in Massachusetts?
That also kind of depends on the individual landlord or property management company. Some do require that.
Does the university have a preferred renter apartment?
So we have a preferred listing website, which is the one we've shared. And so folks that list on there are folks that have paid to list on our site. So you're unlikely to find scams and things on there. And we also have the ability, if we're having a lot of issues with a particular landlord, we do have the ability to take them off of that website. So we don't have a preferred list, but can kind of consider the folks that list on our site overall as that preferred landlord list.
Can you talk about how the cost of off-campus housing compares to on-campus housing?
It again, it kind of really depends. So even with residential buildings here on campus, they cost different amounts, much like our off-campus apartments do. And it can really range. So a student could find a room in a shared home for $600 a month. But they could also be signing a studio apartment off campus for $2,600 a month. So there is a huge range in cost. And we can happy to talk one-on-one with individuals in the search process about what might work. But it's hard to do sort of a comparison. When it comes to on-campus housing, it's certainly less complicated because your utilities, everything is included in that one bill. When your students living off campus, they're likely going to be paying a couple different bills, and so you really need to take all of that in consideration.
Is there a meal plan for off-campus housing?
There certainly is. So students can get the YCMP meal plan. They can, yeah, a lot of our students do that. So they can really determine how many they need based on if they just want to have lunch each day, or just have it as an option. They can sort of buy as much or as little as they are interested in.
And I shared the link to the website with more information about the YCMP, which stands for Your Campus Meal Plan. Is there a spring housing fair, and when is it?
Yes, there is, and we'll put it up on the site soon. But I'm 99% sure we are solid with February 26th this year. So it's a little bit earlier in hopes that students can come check it out and then are able to kind of go home, potentially spring break, and talk it over with their families or supporters.
Is it safe to live off campus?
Yes, I think, in terms of the area, it is a very, safe area. We haven't heard, really stories of students feeling unsafe living in the Amherst area. Um, there's a great police department for the various towns that we work with, quite a bit. And so we always make sure students are aware of what the different sort of, emergency contacts are for their.
Yeah, good. So the next question says, are some apartments furnished?
Yes, that's another thing you can kind of filter through on our website, but there are apartments that are furnished. And then for folks who would like a furnished apartment, but that's sort of not what they're finding, there are also companies like Port Furniture where you can rent the furniture so that you're not dealing with sort of buying and getting rid of stuff each year.
Are there ever situations where students are not able to find any housing, either on campus or off campus?
Not these days, no. So there is plenty of housing available off campus. Even right now, there's still apartments available that students could start renting tomorrow. So during COVID times, it was definitely different, but we're coming out of that. We've had a lot of new builds in the last few years, so we have not had the case where students are having trouble like we used to.
All right, so I don't see any other questions. So, Maura, my last question for you is if there was one thing that you wanted folks to remember from today, what would that be?
Kind of two things. I think the first, really don't sort of stress and panic about the off-campus search process. There isn't the rush really that they maybe used to be, or that there might be the narrative that there is. And the other thing is really just knowing that our office is here to support you and your student in that search process. So as I mentioned, we are happy to meet over phone, over Zoom, in person, to kind of talk about your individual situation. And we're happy to do that just with your student or with them and their roommates or with you as well. So if you hear your student sort of talking about the off-campus housing process, just kind of making sure that they know that off-campus student life exists, would be a great help to us.
Well, Maura, thank you again for being here with us today and helping to help our families support their student. Families, like I said, this recording will be available on our website and on our Facebook. And we will be back next week with another webinar about supporting your student and their mental health. And so we hope you will be there. Thank you all, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.